Welcome back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you, this time with Drago, and we're going for a flight. We're going to go for a flight over Donetsk as requested by some of the subscribers. They wanted to see some more detail. Drago, welcome back. How you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me again.
Excellent. Good to have you on. Let's see if we can get this game fired up. But first of all, let's put some of these, let me see here, TV only. There we go. These are some of the articles that we're going to discuss. Drago has written some articles online in the Infobricks portal. Super duper missile in death throes, Japan ignoring price cap, NATO expansionism, F-35 sucks, Holy Trinity of artillery and war machines, and the simultaneous US aggression in the Black Sea and the Mediterranean as multipolarity accelerates. Alright, now let's get back to us and then get back in the game. Alright, let's see how that looks. Game. Where's game? Game. There we go. Alright. We are in the chopper and ready to go. Welcome to Donetsk, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Actually, let me check the audio. Talk to me, Drago. Let me check what your audio sounds like versus everything else that we're listening to.
Yep. You can hear me all right?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think so. I think so. All right. Talk to me while I take off.
Well, it's you know, there's been so many news in the last week or so it's, you know, I don't even know where to start from. I guess Trump's arrest was probably the biggest news of the last week. So, and it's a major event. Like, I mean, it's ongoing, so it's a major event still yet. So, I guess we could discuss that a little bit.
Trump? I think it's hilarious. I think it just shows how, like, it has nothing to do with the land of the free and home of the brave.
Yep, pretty much the exact opposite of that.
That's one way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, you know, like, I mean, it's the Americans were always quick to ridicule Russia and, you know, the former Soviet Union about their show trials. But if this isn't a show trial, I don't know what it is, man.
I don't think show trial even begins to cover it. Like, it's a lot worse than just a show trial. If you ask for my
it's like
opinion,
a non-existent crime.
Like, the fact is that they charged him of, like, things that are not even specified, basically, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah. 34 counts of nothing.
Welcome to Donetsk, everybody. The city is much bigger than one would assume. When I went there last year, I was actually surprised at how big the city is, as far as square meterage or kilometers or miles or whatever. Pretty huge city, and these are the terracones. I don't know if any of you viewers are familiar with terracones. That's what they're called, these hills that you see all over the Ukrainian landscape. They're actually I think it's called Sut. Is it called Sut? No, it's not called Sut. It's like the waste from mining. Over years and years of mining, the stuff that they don't use, they just put into piles. And these are the piles that look like little hills all over Ukraine. When I found that out, it was insane. Like, they're all made from you know, waste. They're not actually natural.
For sure. I mean, it's an industrial area, so it's. I mean, I'm pretty, you know, like, surprised there aren't even more of those, but yeah.
I'm having a look here at the screen to see how you guys are seeing this, because I'm seeing one thing on screen, but because of the recording and whatnot, it's probably gonna look a lot worse for you guys, but some of you enjoy this anyway. So, Drago, tell us more about that hypersonic US failure.
Yeah, it's like one of the many failures that specific missile had, or the program. It's called the Air Launched Rapid Response Weapon, ARRW, and I mean the official name is AGM-183A. And I mean it's pretty much like an example of how the military-industrial complex in the U.S. works, and it's about pouring money onto the problem until you fix it, or in this case, you don't fix it at all. You just give up.
Yeah, so what I think I remember is about 2-3 months ago they had like a test flight or something and it failed, or test firing.
Actually, the one that was one. That was the one in December, and that one was actually successful. But the problem is, it was the only successful test. And the problem is that the Lockheed Martin, which is the company that produces this missile, that designs it, actually, they faked a lot of tests before that. So what they would do is like they would launch the rocket booster, which is like 1950s tech, basically. Like most countries have the technology to create rocket boosters, but they didn't actually. What they didn't do is they didn't test the actual hypersonic weapon that goes onto the rocket booster. And what they were doing is they were like faking it. They were saying, oh, the hypersonic missile test was successful. But in fact, they were just testing the rocket booster and reporting it as a success of the entire weapon. So after like 4 years of doing that, the Congress realized they were being, duped. And, like basically they were just giving money for nothing. And they were pretty, furious when the auditors found out about this, and I think that was one of the reasons why they canceled the program.
For the eagle-eyed viewers and the people who have subscribed to this channel from the onset, we are here at the monastery near the Donetsk airport, where Texas used to serve, I guess, or protect the monastery from Ukrainian Nazi attacks. This is what is it called? Cemetery. Yeah, this is a cemetery here, and the church, and the monastery. And this is the quote-unquote new terminal, which doesn't look like this at all, and is completely destroyed. And there is the old control tower, which gave nightmares to a lot of Donetsk fighters for many years, until it was also destroyed. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to interject that while we're flying over Donetsk airport, or former and future Donetsk airport. So basically what you're telling me about the US military-industrial complex is that it's a money laundering scheme.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Yeah, pretty much.
I don't know, I mean, like, if you're telling me that they're faking tests for missiles as if they're actual, like they're testing, they're presenting booster tests as if they're missile tests, that's high-level plagiarism is one way to put it.
Yeah, that's the arsenal of freedom for everyone, I guess.
And that ties us into that F-35 article that you wrote. What was that about?
Yeah, that was actually about the readiness rates of the F-35, and considering the fact that the fighter has been inducted into service like in 2015, which is now almost a decade ago, like 8 years ago. It's still not even like, it still doesn't have the initial operational capability, which is pretty ludicrous for a fighter which has been for so long in service with the U.S. Army, with the U.S. military actually. And now what actually happened is that the readiness rates have not actually gone up in the last 2 years; they've gone down. So now the overall readiness rates of F-35s is 30%, actually 29 point something. So like that means that of the 540 that the Americans have, only 160, like around 160, are battle ready. So No, it's a
And
crazy low percentage.
and even that battle ready is subjective, because like wouldn't they like do some interception mission or something over Europe recently and the radars malfunctioned, something of that sort?
Yeah, yeah. Like the radar was supposed to detect the Belarusian S-300, but it didn't do it properly. And there are various like there's a lot of speculation about what happened, but some people think that some Russian or Belarusian electronic warfare system actually messed up the radar. So, I mean, I can't corroborate those claims, but I guess it's possible because electronic warfare is basically that's the purpose of electronic warfare.
Yeah. For the viewers who are watching us fly, excuse me, we're passing over Avdiivka, and we're going to be flying towards Artemovsk, which is no longer called Bakhmut, because it is more than 80% Russian now.
Yep.
Tell me about that other thing that we mentioned, that multipolarism and the U.S. starting problems, let's say, in the
US
Mediterranean.
Yeah. So essentially, the article is about the simultaneous deployments of U.S. Navy in the Black Sea and the Eastern Mediterranean. So actually, the former was for the Sea Shield 23 exercise, which involves like maybe a dozen NATO countries in the area. And it's actually very, very close to the Ukrainian border. It's on the Danube Delta, which is in Romania, and that area specifically, Tulcea County, actually borders Ukraine, the Ukrainian Odessa Oblast. So, like, it's essentially very close to the conflict, and it's pretty insane that the Americans are doing that in that area because it's very risky. And the other thing is the deployment in the Eastern Mediterranean, which is supposed to be like an intimidation for the pro-Iranian forces in Syria and for the Syrian government itself. So essentially what they're trying to do is they're trying to maintain the conflict there because the Russians and the Chinese are trying to reconcile all these warring parties in the Middle East. And they've been largely successful, especially the Chinese. I mean, now we're having Saudi Arabia and Iran establishing relations, after decades of enmity, like total rivalry, which, I never thought I'm going to see. It's pretty impressive what the Chinese diplomacy was able to accomplish. And on the other hand, the Russians are trying to reconcile the Turks and the Syrians, which again is like almost equally...
It seems to be working, yeah.
Well, yeah, like I would say it's not impossible, but it's extremely hard because Turkey is occupying large parts of Syria. And they do have some, mutual interests like getting, Kurds under control. But like they have very diverging interests in the Idlib region, where the Turks actually control and finance a lot of these Al-Qaeda affiliated terrorists. So, I'm not sure how the Russians are going to manage that, but let's hope they do.
Considering you mentioned Turkey, what's your reaction or your take on the Finland joining NATO thing and Turkey's, they'll never join because they have blah blah, YPG, etc., and now they're a member of NATO?
Yeah, actually, the Finns didn't actually have a lot of these Kurdish, opposition forces or
it was
opposition
the Swedes?
figures. Yeah, it was the Swedes, but the thing is, like, these two countries are usually lumped together when it comes to EU topics and NATO topics.
Just like the Poodles,
but
Latvia and Lithuania.
Yeah, pretty much like just like the Baltic states. And in this case, for Russia, it would have been easier if Sweden got into NATO, because it's less like, it's further away from Russia and it doesn't border Russia directly, like Finland does. And for Russia, it's a problem because, now the border between Russia and NATO, the direct border, the line of contact, has actually tripled to over 2,000 kilometers. And, it's going to be a problem. In terms of land warfare, it's not, because it's a very, very swampy area, very cold, very heavily forested. So, neither side actually has, any advantages or disadvantages in that case. However, Finland bought the F-35, which, you know, despite all its flaws, is, you know, has very advanced sensors. So these can be used for surveillance. And I'm pretty sure, you know, the Finns are just going to transfer the information to the Americans. So the Americans can get almost real time, you know, electronic image and radar image of the areas around the Russian border, that specific region. So, you know, I mean, it is an advantage for NATO. However, I'm not sure how much of an advantage that is for Finland, because they're going to become a target for nukes like in 5 minutes. So
yeah, I was just gonna ask if they're getting the F-35, they, I assume, are getting also an F-35A, which means it carries atomic weapons, which means the next topic we should talk about is that statement was it Macron, I think, who said that like foreign nukes should not be on foreign soil or some stuff like that. I think he was referring to Lukashenko and you know, the new news of Russian nukes, but he forgets that he has American nukes on his soil.
Yeah, I mean, actually, there are, as far as I know, there are no American nukes in France, but there are in other countries. In, I don't know, in Belgium. I'm not sure about Belgium, but definitely in Netherlands, in Germany, in Italy, in Turkey. Yeah. So, like, you know, all these countries have American nukes, and they are, for some reason, complaining that the Russians are moving their nukes to Belarus, which is a neighboring country, and none of the countries that I mentioned, you know, like, is nowhere near the U.S. So, you know, that's a little bit more hypocrisy than I can handle, to be honest.
So it's like a Cuban Missile Crisis, where everybody's got blinders on, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. What was that other article that you had? Something about the what is it called? The de-dollarization, or
oh yeah, that's a pretty like interesting topic, and I'm pretty amazed that like not more people are talking about this, because countries like, including France, which has recently bought some I think it was natural LNG, natural gas from, I'm not sure, was it Qatar or the Emirates, but they paid for it in yuan. So that was actually the first time that a major Western country used non-Western currency to buy essential commodities like oil or gas. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not a big deal in the sense that, you know, like, it's not gonna dethrone the dollar now or tomorrow, but it's like a historical point where that process is basically irreversible now, unless, you know, some world-ending conflict happens in the meantime. So, yeah, essentially, you know, countries are just ditching the dollar, and I think the direct consequence were the sanctions that they imposed in Russia and all this, you know, Russian foreign reserves that they confiscated. They're frozen first and then confiscated, and now they want to, you know, even give these reserves to Ukraine and other countries. So, you know, countries are just ditching the dollar, ditching U.S. bonds, because they realize that, you know, you can't trust the country which is just gonna, you know, freeze your stuff.
Yeah. It is very weird what's going on in the world financial markets, or has been going on, let's say, for the last year, with regards to, you know, freezing sovereign state assets and so on and so forth. That's like, you know, something unthinkable a couple of years ago. Yeah, so it's absolutely no surprise that the multipolar world is emerging stronger as opposed to weaker, with the help of the US meddling everywhere, basically.
Yeah, and, you know, like, now they include all the major oil producers, considering that Saudi Arabia wants to join this organization called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is like BRICS without Brazil, essentially. So, and it involves a bunch of, you know, Eurasian countries, like including Russia and these former Soviet countries, and China and Pakistan and India, of course. And a lot of smaller countries want to join. And recently, I think at the beginning of April, Iran joined officially, like they became a member. Yeah. And Saudi Arabia became a dialogue partner, which is like one step closer to becoming a member. So, you know, I'm really like, I don't know. I want to say amazed, but I'm not really amazed. I'm actually. It's mind-boggling to me, to see that the Americans have such self-defeating, diplomatic approach. Because, like, if they had any brains, they would try to stop this process, not accelerate it. And that's exactly what they're doing, by creating enemies left and right. So it's crazy.
Yeah, they're shooting themselves in the foot by trying to be like more assertive and more in control, and everybody's just like, no, we're not interested. Basically.
They're shooting themselves in all extremities, if not the head. So I don't know.
Let's talk about some of the, let's say, more current topics. What's your take on the St. Petersburg event that recently happened?
Oh, it's crazy because what the SBU, the Ukrainian intelligence service, does is they're choosing like targets which are like not exactly like very, very famous, but famous enough to have an impact, but not like important enough to get 24-hour protection from the FSB or other Russian services. So like it's like trying to find this like sweet spot where they can like target people without a lot of consequences, but for them, like to create as much chaos as possible for the Russians. So Tatarsky or Fomin, as his real name was, like he was important. Like he wasn't the most important person in Donetsk, obviously, but he was very important because he was reporting directly from battlefields. He was a soldier before that, and then he became like a real-time military journalist. So like he was in the line of fire all the time, and I guess he just relaxed way too much when he came to St. Petersburg because he thought it's not a war zone. But I guess for the SBU, everything is a war zone, so they just decided to go full terrorist.
Never go full terrorist. That's good point.
They will keep doing it. They will keep doing it, and like the FSB is amazing in stopping terrorist attacks, and I've actually followed their work in the last couple of let's say 10 years or even longer when it comes to stopping terrorist attacks from from these terrorists from the Central Asia and countries like from the Middle East and so on. So they became very specialized in that. They became extremely successful. They've stopped like thousands of these attacks in the last couple of years. However, like for the Ukrainians, it's way easier to blend in with the Russians because there's very little difference, between them. And it's
You're
very
saying
hard
physiologically,
to detect.
You're saying physiologically.
And also, like, most Ukrainians can speak fluent Russian, or at least like a lot of Ukrainians can speak fluent Russian, which isn't always the case with with a person from Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan. So they can detect them in an easier way than Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians are using that. I mean, the Kiev regime, to be specific, is using that to their advantage, and I think this is the reason why they can slip up undetected and like do these things.
And what's your take on the huge numbers that have been allotted around about the upcoming Ukrainian great offensive? There's the number of 80,000, I think, was the first number, or 83,000, something like that. And that's the troops that are in Bakhmut and around. And then there's the new number that's like supposedly leaked, which is 200,000.
Yeah, I've seen like numbers ranging from 45 to 250,000. So like considering that all this info clout is such, it's really hard to determine what's the truth in that case. To be honest, I don't know. Like especially with the new Russian weapons, which we will talk about in a minute. I'm not sure like how they can put a lot of troops in one place. Like I don't know. I'm not sure if they can maintain high concentrations of troops without getting blasted to smithereens by the Russians. So I highly doubt there are like that many soldiers, and even if there are, I'm not sure like what their offensive potential is, because they've been largely degraded because all these like first-rate mobilized troops have been either destroyed or damaged. So I'm not sure like what potential they have, but I presume that they cannot be as successful as they think they might be.
Tell us what you want to say about the weapons, or like the Holy Trinity that's letting Russia lead in this conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned 3 weapons there because I mean I could mention more, but the article was already long as it is. So essentially, I mentioned 3 weapons: the Krasnopol guided precision guided shell, the Lancet drones or kamikaze drones or loitering munitions, if you like.
Loitering,
and
yeah.
the last one were these, like, they call them Russian JDAM bombs. I mean, it's not really Russian JDAM, but it's a similar concept. So, yeah, JDAM is essentially like it means Joint Direct Attack Munition. That's the meaning of the acronym. But what it is really is that the Americans what they were doing, like, in the last 20 plus years, they were taking all these like dumb free fall bombs or gravity bombs that they had, and they have a lot of these in storage, and they were putting these wing kits on them, which also have like GPS guidance and laser guidance and so on, and turning essentially these dumb bombs into smart bombs for a fraction of the cost, like of making new, guided bombs.
Welcome to Artemovsk, everybody. Yep. This is the city of Artemovsk, and this is, I think, the main road that splits the city down the middle, right next to Bahmutsky River and this reservoir. So you're saying that the Russians copied the Americans and made their own smart dumb bombs?
Yep, they essentially like created these kits, but even those kits that the Russians made are, like, they're like 2 or 3 times cheaper than the American ones. And they're equally as effective. So I've seen videos of Ukrainian commanders, complaining about this, saying that they cannot intercept these weapons. They cannot intercept the fighters that are dropping them, because the Russians actually don't have to fly above the area. What they have to do, because now the bombs have wings, turning them into glide bombs essentially, they can just release the bomb from an altitude of like 10 to 15 kilometers, and then the bomb can go more than 50 kilometers, in range. So that's pretty much a no-go zone for the Ukrainian air defenses, and they can't do anything about it. And because those are bombs, they don't leave any like heat signature or anything. They're very, very difficult to track. So they just drop and then kill a bunch of people, and they don't even know what hit them. So it's a very deadly weapon, and the most importantly for the Russians, it's very cheap and very accessible for their air force.
Yeah, I've heard they're making something like 100 of them a day or something like that. Yeah. Or they're using 100.
I've also seen the numbers. Yeah, exactly. Like, I've also seen the numbers, at least 100. It's possible it's even more. Because the point is, they don't even have to make bombs. What they have to do is make kits for them and then install the kits on the bombs, which is simplifying the production process quite a lot. And it's quite fast, and it's cheap. The most important thing is it's much cheaper than building new bombs. So it's bad news for the AFU. And another thing is, of course, the Lancet drones, which have been, these things have had a devastating effect on the Ukrainian army. And I've seen like hundreds of hours of videos of these things destroying everything from groups of infantry to howitzers and tanks and armored vehicles. So it's and also like these strong points of the Ukrainian army on the front lines. So it's a very effective weapon, and I sure as hell wouldn't want to be in the way of one.
Yeah, those Lancet drones, and the thing is about them, they can hover and do recon work before they do the destruction work, which makes them like dual use, so that's
exactly
very, very useful for the Russians.
Yeah, they actually have like they usually launch 2 drones. One is doing the recon. I think it's called the Fortuna. And the other is actually the targeting drone, and it can actually, deploy different warheads. So they can deploy anti-tank warheads, anti-personnel warheads, anti-strong point warheads. So it's it's a very, very dangerous weapon, and it's extremely cheap. I mean, you can destroy, like a multi-million-dollar weapon with it, and or even more than one. So, because I've seen videos where the Ukrainians would have like 2 or 3 howitzers in one place, and the Lancet would hit all the ammo, which is close to these howitzers, and it would destroy all 3. So it's very, very effective.
Yeah, yeah. The Russians definitely have a bunch of interesting toys. Guess plus me. All right, I think we're done with our little flight to Artemovsk. Drago, thank you for stopping by. It's been an interesting talk and an interesting flight, I hope, for the viewers. Everybody, thank you for sticking around to the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's do one of these things where we click here, and there we go, subscribe. Yeah, thank you. Have a good one. Taking it out. Cheers.